The scorching sun beat down mercilessly on Fort Benson. A crowd of soldiers and traders watched a terrible scene unfold. There stood Lady Arabella Worthington, her head bowed in shame, her dress damp with sweat. Tears threatened to spill, but she refused to give her father the satisfaction of seeing her cry. This was her punishment for being 23 and unmarried, for being a constant source of his displeasure. Lord Worthington called her gluttonous and disobedient, saying she had disgraced their family name for the last time. He addressed the tall Apache warrior who stood silently before them. "As agreed," he said, "I offer my daughter as compensation for the land dispute. She will serve your people as you see fit." Arabella's head snapped up in horror. "Father, please," she begged, but he hushed her with a hiss, saying she would now learn the consequences of failure. The Apache warrior studied her with dark, unreadable eyes. Unlike her father's hateful gaze, his expression showed neither disgust nor triumph. He simply nodded once, accepting the gift without comment. Lord Worthington turned away, already mounting his horse. "Do with her what you will," he said, and with that, he was gone, leaving Arabella abandoned in a strange land, handed to a man considered savage by her people. The Apache approached her with deliberate, calm movements. He took the small bag containing her possessions and gestured for her to follow him. As they left the fort, Arabella cast one last desperate look over her shoulder. Her world was collapsing. For days they traveled across vast stretches of desert and scrubland. Arabella's feet blistered inside her impractical shoes, and her skin burned under the merciless sun. She expected cruelty from the savage Apache her father had so often described. But Maka remained a mystery. He didn't force her to walk past exhaustion. When she stumbled, he paused without a word, allowing her to rest. At night, he built fires and shared his food and water without fanfare or expectation. His silence was neither hostile nor comforting. It simply existed, like the desert around them. On the second day, she found her voice. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. Maka pointed toward distant mountains. "Home," he said, the first word he had spoken to her. The small gesture of offering her an extra blanket on a cold night confused her. She had been raised to believe the Apache were bloodthirsty savages, yet this man showed a quiet consideration her own father never had. "Why did you accept me?" she finally asked. "I'm clearly a burden." Maka looked at her for a long moment. "The white man does not understand value," he said simply. Arabella watched him work, pondering his words. By the fifth day, her body had begun to adapt. Her steps were more confident, her breathing less labored. She noticed how Maka read the landscape, finding water and spotting game where she saw only emptiness. Once, when she correctly identified an edible plant he had taught her about, acknowledgement lifted the corner of his mouth. That night, camped beneath a vast canopy of stars, Arabella realized something had shifted. The Apache was no longer just her captor. He had become her lifeline in this harsh wilderness. The Apache village appeared suddenly, nestled in a hidden valley protected by red cliffs. As Maka led her in, children paused in their play, and women looked up with curious but not hostile expressions. Arabella clutched her tattered shawl tighter, painfully aware of her disheveled appearance. Maka guided her to a small dwelling and introduced her to his grandmother, Nelly. Before Arabella could protest, Maka left her with the elderly woman. Nelly beckoned her inside, and the message was clear. This was Arabella's space, and she was welcome. That evening, Arabella watched the tribe's daily routines. Children helped with chores, women worked together, and men shared their hunting bounty equally. There was none of the savagery her father had described. Instead, She witnessed a community bound by mutual respect and cooperation. Days passed, and Arabella struggled to find her place. Her hands blistered as she tried to help with daily tasks. Her clumsy efforts to grind corn or weave baskets often ended in frustration. One morning, Nelly gave her a clay pot and pointed toward the stream. A simple task. But halfway back to the village, the heavy vessel slipped from her grasp and shattered on the rocky ground. She knelt, tears welling in her eyes. A shadow fell across her. Looking up, she saw Maka standing over her, his expression unreadable. She braced herself for anger, but instead, he crouched beside her and gently took her injured hand, applying a crushed leaf that stopped the bleeding. "Leave this," he said, indicating the broken pot. He handed her a smaller container from his belt. "Start with what you can carry." The simple wisdom of his words struck her deeply. He wasn't pitying her. He was teaching her to build strength gradually. The next day, he began teaching her about plants, his patience surprising her. "Why are you helping me?" she finally asked. "You are not what your father believes," he said. "You are not what you believe either." His words lingered in her mind. For the first time in her life, someone was seeing beyond her size, beyond her failures. Someone was seeing possibility. Weeks turned into months. Arabella's hands grew calloused, her skin bronzed by the sun, and the smaller water pot had been replaced by increasingly larger ones. The women of the tribe no longer watched her with curiosity, but included her in their circle. One evening, Maka approached her as she worked on a basket. "Come," he said simply. He led her up a narrow path to a ledge overlooking the valley, where the village fires twinkled like earthbound stars. He produced a small wooden flute his father had made. He explained that music speaks when words cannot, and played a haunting melody of longing. When the final note faded, he watched her intently. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Like you," he replied, his voice low and certain. Arabella's breath caught. No one had ever called her beautiful. "Your father saw only what you could not do," Maka continued. "He did not see your strength, your kindness, your quick mind." He gestured to the village below. "My people see, I see." Tears filled her eyes. "I was nothing there," she admitted. "A failure." "Here you are becoming yourself," he said, reaching out to touch her hand. "This is why I accepted you that day, not as punishment, but as possibility." That night, Arabella realized what had begun as her greatest humiliation had become her path to freedom. The warning came with the first winter frost. A hunter returned, breathless with news. "Your father," Maka told her, his face grave. "He comes with the blue coats." That night, the tribal council gathered, and Maka declared they would not flee but would not fight unless forced. He told Arabella she must decide if she would go back. 6 months ago, she would have leapt at the chance. But now, the thought filled her with dread. "My place is here," she said firmly. "With your people, with you." Something flickered in Maka's eyes. "Then we will face this together," he said. The soldiers arrived the following day, led by Lord Worthington. He looked at his daughter, his eyes widening. "Thank God you're alive. We've come to rescue you from these savages." The familiar contempt made her flinch, but she stood her ground. "I don't need rescuing, Father." Her father's face darkened. "Look at you, dressed in animal skins. Whatever these creatures have done to you, it ends today." Maka stepped forward. "She stays or goes by her own choice," he said in careful English. "Not yours, not mine." Arabella interrupted. "I choose to stay." Enraged, her father ordered the lieutenant to seize her, claiming she'd been bewitched. The officer hesitated, eyeing the Apache warriors forming a semicircle around Maka and Arabella. Arabella confronted her father, a lifetime of shame crystallizing into clarity. "You mean my size?" she asked. "The great disappointment that made me unworthy of your love?" He scoffed, telling her he had arranged a match for her with a widower who was willing to overlook her shortcomings. "Another punishment disguised as opportunity," Arabella said quietly. "I found something here you never gave me. Respect, acceptance, purpose." Lord Worthington's patience cracked. He drew a concealed pistol. "If I can't have my daughter back," he snarled, aiming at Maka, "then neither will you, savage." Everything happened in an instant. The gun fired, but a warrior lunged forward, taking the bullet in the shoulder to protect his chief. Chaos erupted. Maka's command, "Hold." No more blood, cut through the tumult. He pointed to Lord Worthington. "This man has broken peace. Take him away." The lieutenant nodded grimly. "He'll face military justice." Arabella rushed to help the wounded warrior. She cleaned and dressed his wound, applying herbs she had gathered herself. That night, Maka found her sitting by a fire. "He would have killed you," she whispered. "My own father would have murdered you rather than accept my choice." Maka took her hand. "Some men cannot see beyond themselves. Your father sees you as possession, not a person." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "All my life, I believed I was worthless because he told me so." "To me," Maka said softly, "you are perfect as you are. Strong, wise, beautiful." He wiped away a tear. "Your body carries life well. Your heart carries kindness. Your mind carries wisdom. What more could a man want in a woman?" In that moment, the last chains of her past finally broke away. Spring came to the valley, and a year passed since Arabella's arrival. She was now a confident woman. Her body was strong, her skin bronzed by the sun. She was no longer filled with self-loathing, but with purpose and pride. The tribe called her Nalani, meaning the heavens in their tongue. She had become a healer. Children ran to her, knowing her gentle hands would bring relief. Maka, the man who had received her as punishment, but treasured her as a gift, had become her husband. On the 20th anniversary of her arrival, Nalani sat with Maka on their special ledge overlooking the valley. "Do you ever regret it?" Maka asked, his English now fluent. Nalani smiled, taking his weathered hand in hers. "Not for a single moment," she said. "My father thought he was condemning me to a life of suffering. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift, a chance to discover who I truly am." Maka nodded, his eyes reflecting the sunset. "When your father brought you that day, the other chiefs thought I was foolish. They saw only a burden." "And what did you see?" she asked, though she knew the answer. "I saw a woman whose body spoke of abundance in a land of scarcity, whose eyes held more courage than she knew, whose spirit was trapped, waiting to soar." As darkness fell, Nalani reflected on the strange path that had led her from rejection to acceptance, from shame to pride, from punishment to love. What her father had intended as her greatest humiliation had become her greatest blessing. In losing everything she had been raised to value, she had found what truly mattered: a love that saw beyond appearances, a purpose that served others, and a home where she belonged exactly as she was.